Welcome to a special episode of the Meinl radio podcast. I'm your host, Norbert Sämann, and today we're diving deep into the creation of Benny Greb's signature quicksand ride and quicksand hats. These groundbreaking cymbals are the result of an incredible collaboration between Benny and the Meinl team. In this episode, we'll take you on a journey from the very first spark of an idea to the final crafted instruments. Along the way, you'll get an exclusive look into Meinl's R&D process and what it takes to bring a musical vision to life. Benny's artistry has shaped the sound of these cymbals, and they are set to become an integral part of his future sound and inspire drummers around the world for years to come. I hope you enjoy this deep dive into the making of something truly special. What's your idea and thought process behind the quicksand ride, having played your sand ride basically since 15 years, since 2009?
That's a long story, but I more and more got exposed to different situations with the sand ride. It always performed well. I really love it dearly. And I was able to play it in big band situations, in electronic situations, in harder ones, heavier ones. And I have one particular one that I always try to travel with. I absolutely love it. I just thought it would be nice to have one that's higher register, so just higher in basic note, in tone, and also a little bit more like clear and articulated, or even more clear and articulated. And this came because it's not that I necessarily was like, but I just got very curious when I realized I was playing a couple of shows with the Buddy Rich Big Band. That was a huge honor. And I got into research and checked out some old kind of big band stuff and black and white footage of the Duke Ellington orchestra, and sometimes I realized, damn, like this ride is pretty small, and then I remember that in the 70s, like drummers like Gad or like had also sometimes rides that were awfully small compared to nowadays, and I realized I always thought of rides as being 20-inch. 21-inch, 22-inch now, even. And what's up with these smaller sizes? So these two kind of thoughts came nicely together. I found out that also, like, when you, like these LA, like Wrecking Crew thingies, and you sometimes saw, or Motown stuff, you sometimes saw rides, even with Elvin Jones, that were like, that's not a 20-inch, you know? So I through more and more research, I just found out that there is one area of what a ride cymbal could be that I just even never thought about. And also for me, seemed no one is thinking about it. I didn't see those at offer anywhere. I didn't see anyone who came out with a way smaller ride in the last decade, really. Maybe I missed one, I don't know, but for me at least. And so I got curious, and then I found out, so there's also something with the build of it. I then in interviews and checked that, okay, so sometimes symphonic cymbals were used by old style jazz drummers or studio cats. They used, and by that I mean the one with the leather strap that you hold with the hands and bang against each other. So most people know this from the marching stuff. So they are pretty hefty and heavy in weight, and definitely definitely thicker and heavier than what you think an 18-inch to be. We think of a crash cymbal, nice crash cymbal, 18-inch. So that's how I started experimenting with. Meinl has beautiful, like orchestral and symphonic cymbals in that way, and I realized, oh wow, especially when recording it had a very clear and very focused kind of sound that the bigger you get normally, which is also beautiful, but the more complex and more spread out kind of the overtones get, and the more sustain you get sometimes. And it's like, that's wonderful and beautiful. But this was a different animal that, yeah, I couldn't let go. I really fell in love with.
Before we decided about the size, there were other cymbals that we made a lot of tests with.
Yeah.
But obviously those weren't successful, or at least not going in the right direction that you had in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Before I got hip to the size option, so to speak, and that whole thing, and I remember calling Norbert being like, "Oh, I tried to get this sound." That was before that, where I tried to basically get a different flavor of the sand ride. I wanted something that's a little bit more transparent even, and definitely higher in pitch. And I thought I'll get it with different way of lathing, or different way of maybe also modifying cymbals that are already in the Meinl range, in the ride cymbal range. So yeah, we destroyed a lot of wonderful rides but the thing is that that's how it goes. I have a little bit of experience in prototyping with Meinl, and we all love cymbals, and that's sometimes painful to, you got to try out things, and then you try out something, and very often a perfectly beautiful cymbal just gets absolutely ruined, and you didn't think so. It's a very interesting thing, because a cymbal is so vulnerable and so sensitive to any changes to the surface that are being made, because not only do you make it thinner or thicker and you think like, oh, then it sounds different, but there is a weird thing that goes on with a certain tension that has to be there for this thing to sound a certain way, to sound in control or to sound out of control, and every little bitty thing that you do actually changes all the other things as well, that you think, oh, so now because of the weight we have this quality. Now we changed the surface. No, then you messed up what you tried to get before with the weight or with the pitch or whatever. Through the sandblasting, for example, you shorten the sustain, but you also change the pitch. With the lathing, which is, if you don't know what that is, to everyone out there, it's basically when you scratch in a circular way, like material off the cymbal, you get these kind of curly, kind of B20 kind of locks that fly away. This is all material that's been taken off, and the cymbal gets thinner, but also again the tension changes. So it's sometimes we know what we're doing. Very often it's still a little bit mysterious and unexpected. So it's terribly exciting. And it's also a big responsibility because most of these cymbals are very expensive. And I then come with an idea, and the guys say like, okay, I'm like, yeah, I think if we do this, and then we do it, and everyone looks at each other and be like, oh man. Next one. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking, but see, like with everything in life, when you then get to something where you're like, oh, that actually worked, that's then a very rewarding feeling, especially after all the body count that of the missed trials, so to speak. But so yes, I thought I have to modify a 20-inch cymbal to get to this sound, and that was wrong. Unexpectedly, what I searched for all along was to be found in a smaller but heavier cymbal, and I did not expect that.
Yeah, in cymbal making, you can't isolate the individual elements. You know, there is the bell, there is the bow, there is the edge part, and whatever you change at one of these areas will affect the entire sound. You can't isolate one element only. And that's what we realized when working on those prototypes too, and that's what makes it a little bit challenging when you try to design a certain sound, because okay, if I change this, a lot of other things will also change, and is it then still the right sound that I have in mind. Yeah.
And
So-
honestly, I often hear that in competitors' cymbals where okay, they wanted this sound, that was their priority, and sometimes you can't have one without the other, like, right? So you go for one thing, and then maybe you have a great bell, but then the stick sound will be a certain way if you're not careful, and then sometimes maybe you stop there and be like, okay, but the bell is the most important thing. But it's like, and that's kind of easy. We know a couple of tricks that we can do to get this or to get this. But what's really difficult and what I'm so proud of is if, especially in a ride, and the same stuff happens with hi-hats, right? Even hi-hats can have like a wonderful stick sound and a shitty bell, but usually in hi-hats people don't care that much about the bell sound. But a ride cymbal has to be, as far as I'm concerned, and that's what would say I'm really proud of, is that if you balance all of these aspects, like a nice bell sound that's pretty distinct from the rest of the cymbal, then a stick sound that's really like that's the clear pronunciation of the right playing, or maybe actually even your drumming, especially in jazz, and then like a crashability that doesn't get out of control, and if to get these all like in the right percentage is almost impossible to do.
Is the crashing aspect relevant for this quicksand ride to you?
It has. The most important thing for me was to get a clarity, less dark roar, or less like a more focused overtone, which you get through the sound notch. You really take away a lot of, I would call it bad complexity. There's some complexity that's really nice in cymbal sound, but there's sometimes like this spread that makes it sound a little bit like almost dirty, I would say. This is a very focused ride, a very kind of focused stick sound, very focused bell sound, and the crash is not as much as a open crash cymbal, but it belongs to the ride wonderfully. So if you want that tone that you play with a stick, if you want ding 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 ding, if you want that longer and with more spread, then you have that accessible with like a little change of the angle.
Yes, because 18-inch normally is a crash size.
Yeah.
Is the crash size, 18-inch normally.
I would say so, yeah. Yeah, my other signature crashes are 18-inch, but you can bend them. They're beautifully bent. This thing is a tank.
Way heavier.
Yeah.
Well, the most notable thing to notice about the ride is the notch, the sound notch, the cutout.
Yeah.
How did this happen? What made you think of that?
Well, so to the listeners that don't know, yesterday was very exciting for me and for us, because that's the first time where we showed it to some of the distributors that will then maybe spread this to hopefully you. And that was the first time really where some kind of public was exposed to this stuff. And it was wonderful to see that some people said like, huh? Of course, this is a maybe an unusual look, or some people called it innovative, but it is as traditional as it could be. Like especially when I checked jazz stuff and like early like 60s, 70s stuff, like it's very common to see, especially the rides where you think, oh, that sounds awesome. There's a piece missing sometimes in different shapes. And that intrigued me as well. And if you talk to jazz guys, they play a ride for a while, and it breaks or cracks at the edge. They will try to get it repaired, and you get something like this, sometimes smaller than this. But everyone who does this will usually tell you that it sounds better afterwards. It sounds even better now. And to be honest, sometimes I thought maybe this is an esoteric kind of feeling where you saved a loved one and now you cherish it even more. But I thought, like, why not put this to the test? So I again like grinded different kinds of cutouts into different cymbals and recorded them. Yes, and recorded them before and after. And I took the bottom of my 16-inch sand hats. That was the smallest, thickest cymbal that I had. and cut out a huge bit, actually square shaped at first, and it was mind-blowing how much that changed the sound without changing anything else. It didn't change the surface, it didn't change all the other things that also do something. But I was like, oh wow, that does something. So why not use that from the factory? Now the challenge is, if you do it like I did it with a grinder and you do it in square, it's very different with power tools to make you have to make like cuts like this. This really hurts like the overall structure and durability of the cymbal. You get a result, okay, but this will not be a long-lasting modification, to put it nicely. So that's where then we experimented with the team here at Meinl to have it. So what matters, we found out, is to take material away first of all, and to if you interrupt this outer ring, that's a very integral part for a long sustain of a cymbal. As when you disrupt that, it's like putting a gaffer tape on the cymbal a little bit, or to dampen it in other ways, or when a cymbal settles after a very long time when you played it for 20 years. And I'm fascinated also with this idea to offer a cymbal that sounds like it has been in your possession for a decade or two. So yeah, normally cymbals are round, but that's the thing. It's for jazz guys, this is not uncommon to see a cymbal like this, or a little bit like this with cutouts like this. But again, it's not. It was a purely sound choice, and it's necessary to make it sound that way. And but then afterwards, I think it's a really wonderful feature because it's a great look too. The other advantage I have to say is that this thing fits way better in every suitcase. So if you have a bigger like Samsonite suitcase, I don't want to drop names, but I use these super light Samsonite suitcases, and I could never take my ride, and I wanted to sometimes with long travels, and this one fits in every suitcase, so that's also good. It's a good travel ride.
Yeah. Will it replace your 20-inch now entirely?
That's a very good question, and that's a very difficult question. Of course, every time I have a vision like this to change the sound, even more the older I get, I got bit by bit very comfortable and very detailed with my sound. So I get closer and closer. I get more focused and more focused, like what I want and what I definitely need. And so this is really a seismic shift and it hasn't happened for many years, right? Like I was very happy with my ride and still am. But I'm as excited as the people at Meinl are what will happen with my setup now. But you people out there know this as well. If you have a new toy, you want to also maybe overuse it even. But I will. This is my ride now. I will definitely play it in my next shows and next recordings for sure. I played it in some recordings already without telling anyone.
The prototype.
Yeah, the prototype. Yeah. And so yeah, but the other thing is, again, by not questioning the 20-inch kind of thing, or the 22 or 20 or 21-inch thing, we have there are actually YouTube videos about this, about ergonomic setup and the problem of the ride, and then people have like one there, one here, the ride here, so that it sits nicely, or how to make it if you have more toms and you have with the shoulder and stuff. One thing that I didn't think about at all in the beginning is like, this is way easier to position. I think for like, especially metal guys or like jazz guys that have a lot of cymbals, like this will be way easier to put into if you have a bigger setup. I have a pretty small setup, but I think this is something I enjoy right now too, because I have my crasher hats like right in this cowbell position, if you want to call it that, on the bass drum. And that was also sometimes a hustle with the 20-inch and be like, okay, where is that? Where does that live in comparison to how do I reach my toms? So, and and this is way easier like that too. So I think this is also a good companion sonically to everything from the Sand series anyway. And and I sometimes play them both already in my place, but whether it will be a permanent setup, we will see.
We will see. The 18-inch size has been a common size in other styles, like you mentioned, heavy metal, extreme metal, because
Oh yeah,
usually those drummers have a lot of cymbals, a lot of drums, and space is crucial for them. So every inch less is a big advantage for them.
right.
Would you? How would you describe the sound in terms of for what styles would it work? Would you say it's like a versatile, any style, or is it specific for one style?
The thing is, again, like yesterday, we talked a little bit about it, and when the words innovative, which is a compliment, but I have to add to that I think it's not entirely true, because for me this is more, when you go into a museum and you have these evolutionary states of like humans, and this is, I think, very true to what ride cymbals were before they were called ride cymbals. So when there were just cymbals with different weights, and then I think they then repurpose like sometimes these orchestral cymbals to be like, oh wow, this has a little bit more bite, a little bit more transparency. This is this DNA is in this idea. So and everything from like funk to pop to jazz was played with cymbals like this. Now here is what I think it works really well for. It works incredibly well, especially if you record with one mic, especially if you record, if you hear it like far away, it's very clear, very easy to listen to sound. Gavin Harrison told me the story recently that when he did was a guest at the Royal College of Music, there was this big band thing. I also did that the year before, and he wondered why the band was playing the way they were playing timing wise, and the guy was like playing with brushes, and he wanted to teach something. He went over to the brass guys, and Gavin used to play the trumpet as well as me, and so he went over to the trumpets and they're sometimes like 5-6 meters away, or maybe more. And he was like, he was baffled. He didn't hear anything he didn't hear the drummer at all, like nothing of the brushes at all. So of course, the timing of the band will not be in sync, because there's just no orientation going on. And this is sometimes the same with mixes. When you sometimes think an instrument sounds really great by itself, but then when there is a guitar added and when there's compression added and stuff, the question is, what really remains, and what kind of fights for these priorities sometimes in the music. So it will do a great job there. It will be very easy to kind of know where it is, and it will find its place very easily. Now, here's what it's not. I will also be very honest about this. If you want one of these cymbals that is very wobbly and very kind of whoosh, and very like you just look at it and it kind of starts to kind of be very washy and big, this is definitely not it. This is a successful try at clarity, articulation, and but without it being harsh. When you talked about the heavy metal guys, I also don't want to say that these are harsh, but they want even more kind of, it has to really cut and da da da. It's the same principle probably, where they go to this size and go to heavier, and of course have a bigger bell and everything. But it's not that. It's a very, very still smooth sounding cymbal, but very clear and very articulate. So if you want to try this out, and I think if you just compare it to like other rides, it will be very obvious very, very easily.
When I look at your set, there is a 10-inch tom and a 16-inch tom.
Yeah.
And there is nothing in between. Of course, the snare, but as far as toms, it's 10, 16. When I look at your cymbals, there used to be the 20-inch ride and then a 22-inch crash ride. Now you're going to an 18 jump to 22. And it goes along with your ideas as far as your tom sizes too, 10 to 16.
Well spotted.
Well spotted, yeah. So
Yes.
had this also a role in the decision-making process for the 18-inch, or is it coincidentally that it goes along with your idea anyway of 10, 16 and big jumps?
Yes, absolutely. The thing is that sometimes it's also a great compliment that when someone says like, "Oh, it's like a big drum sound that you have," which is funny because I have a very, very small setup compared to many of my colleagues, which sometimes makes me a little jealous. But anyway, this is another subject. But I think what creates this, or what at least I feel gives me a lot of colors to paint with in a musical sense, is that I have the biggest intervals that I can get. I really like my bass drum and my floor tom especially to be the lowest it can be. I get a lot of comments about this. Oh, Benny's floor tom, But I like this to be as low as possible, as fat as possible, and it's the same with the cymbals. I sometimes find it hilarious in a tragic way if you hear drummers that have like and they have two cymbals that are kind of the same, really, or not so different. It's all like a certain white noise in a certain area. I find this absolutely a misuse of the opportunities. What you can, because if you have because if you don't look at a drum set and you just listen to it with headphones, this will make it feel like very big because of the difference of intervals. And yeah, the 22-inch Sand Crash Ride is basically what we talked about before, the ultimate washiness and spread, and it has a beautiful soft kind of whoosh. It's a little bit like the 16-inch tom for me. That's kind of the lowest I want it to be. And then this is a beautiful, but when you then crash, this is also a very low crash in a way. And I think the space it has now is wonderful. And but I have to experiment some more with it. What that now means I will definitely make a little bit of different choices,
Yes,
but it's
musical choices,
absolutely
different musical choices,
and it's exciting.
Yes,
that's
what it's all about.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
But what was also, and we haven't talked about it yet, but what was also important then is to have the hi-hat. That's kind of almost like a counterweight, because if you have a ride that makes a stronger statement, and then the hi-hat is very, very smooth and darker, that was something where that's also a thought where I was like, okay, I would love to get the same kind of articulation also in the hi-hat.
Before we talk about the hi-hat, I think it'll be really interesting to watch how your musical choices mature, if they even can mature, using that ride, compared to, you've been using the 20-inch for 15 years, and all of a sudden now there is an 18-inch that has an entirely different sound, basic character. I know you played the prototypes for like at least 6-7 months, so you're already familiar with it, but never played it in public or like
because you didn't allow me to.
Yes,
yeah,
I'm always to blame. That's why I'm here for. But no, seriously, I am very excited to see you use it publicly on records and really get the chance to spend more time with that cymbal and that sound, and to follow your musical journey even more. Because I am pretty sure that, not immediately, but if we do this in 2 years again and sit down and talk about, okay, now 2 years later, what has happened musically in terms of my drumming it'll be interesting to hear.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to follow this process.
Well, thank you.
Me too. I'm sure many drummers out there who follow you already will be exciting to see how this is doing for you, how this will do for you.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. Now, yes. So this is the ride. We also developed a hi-hat together, the Quicksand hat, 14-inch. Same question. What started the thought process behind that?
It's the same thought process, basically, of a higher register. Again, the crashes and the ride, and also the sand hats. So the sand ride I'm talking about now, and the sand crashes and the sand hats were of a more darker, kind of pleasant, like softer register. And back then, this was pretty new, actually. Like, and I'm still very proud of it. The hi-hat is, the sand hats are very sensitive. They are very kind of, you can play them super quiet, and they're very, very, but they can also roar if they want to. So, and to the point you were making before, these cymbals definitely changed how I play and how sensitive I am to kind of to dynamics with cymbals, and also with my sound engineer Sven, who you also know. We talked a lot about this stuff and be like, okay, wow, and we have to do it this way then with this, so it sounds great in the overheads and blah blah. But I wanted a higher register, higher tone, and more clarity. And with my philosophy with the sand hats were, and I think that's what most of the time happens, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the bottom cymbal is the heavier one, and the top cymbal
is usually the case.
Yeah,
yes. That's usually the case.
And the top cymbal is the thinner one. And this is extreme in the sand hats, which gives them quite some volume, but it makes them very smooth and silvery, right? But if you want more bite out of the stick sound, and even when you play it with a lot of notes or play it quietly, if you want that pin tick sound, you need a little bit more heftier top cymbal. Now, the challenge here was, if you make the top cymbal thicker, you lose sensitivity if you're not careful, and it becomes a little bit like, it feels like it's harder to play, it's heavier like to play, and it also doesn't react as much. The thing is, if you then turn this ratio around, if you say like we will take for a hi-hat at least a pretty lesser weight bottom cymbal, and then the heavier one on top, that gets you a certain way. But the true switch came when I experimented with different alloys that Cymbals, I call you Cymbals now, that Meinl Cymbals had to offer, which is, and I found it in the pure alloy range, which is quite honestly not something I would have normally been like attracted to by actually the looks of it, and the being like, okay, because I was always thinking like, B20, that's kind of the thing, and everything that gets a little harder than that or more coppery than that is I don't even have to look there, kind of. But that was the ingredient, because with the different material, you get some more oomph without having to make the cymbal very heavy. And so you have a cymbal that reacts very well. You have a cymbal that gives you more articulation and clarity. And I'm not sure if Meinl, did you do that before, to combine like two materials in a hi-hat?
Never.
So this is another first.
It is.
So yeah, so we
I mean, maybe some drummers did it.
Yeah, sure.
On their own, but from our side, officially, we have never offered a hi-hat cymbal made from two different alloys.
Yeah, and I now remember that. That's then, of course, a problem. Like, where do you put that, in which category?
How do we categorize it? Yes.
Because this is a combination of two materials. This is a pure alloy top, so to speak, and a Byzance bottom.
Yes, it's a B12 alloy top and a B20 alloy bottom. Yes, and it is a pure alloy. We categorize it in the pure alloy series.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sandblasted, so it doesn't look like any other pure alloy hi-hat.
Right.
The sandblasting was something that we needed to do sound-wise, right?
Right.
It wouldn't work without.
Otherwise, I've grown so used to this kind of pre-aged sound that, because that's the thing, again, I talked about it before, you want the clarity and the articulation, but you never want it to be harsh or too pingy in a way. I want still it to be it's this balance thing. I don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but you have to, you don't want too much of this, you don't want too much of this. Again, these are more in the clarity and articulation range, but you can overdo that. I remember, and you also have to be careful, like with comparing stuff. I remember the first times I had the excitement and pleasure to select cymbals here. This is a thing that not everyone gets to do. If you have a great music store, maybe you have a lot of cymbals too. Also there, be careful, because maybe you made the experience as well. If you check a lot of cymbals and stuff, and then you think, oh, this one, and then, oh, no, this one is even better. Your ears might go dull after a while a little bit, and then you select the highest, most harshest cymbal ever, because you just thought like, oh, that sounds more fresh than kind of the other ones. So, and then if you play them, you realize, okay, but you can overdo it there too, definitely, right? So that's the thing. And I think for you out there, that's also very important. I don't want to, and I think if we are informed consumers and great musicians, hopefully, we don't want to make the mistake of saying that, the higher frequency the better, or the lower the better, or the thicker the better, or it's more difficult than that. There's always a certain balance, and that's why it took us so long for this one as well, and that's why. But that's it. That's what I'm proud of. That with the hi-hat, for me, it now has this balance of going more in that clarity direction, but not overdoing it. Still being very sensitive, still being...
That's because of the B20 bottom.
I think so, yeah.
The B20 bottom gives it a warmer overall sound.
Yeah.
Especially when you play it with your foot.
Yeah.
When you play it with your stick, you mostly use the B12, like the pure alloy top, which is exactly what you described as like more clarity in the stick sound.
But the interesting thing is when you have the B12 top, and let's say you have a thicker B20 or something, you also get a little ting, ting. You get this belly kind of high frequency thing, which sometimes is longer than the stick sound itself.
Yes.
This
usually is caused by the bottom cymbal.
Yeah.
And here we go.
Yeah.
We also put the cutout, the sound notch into the bottom.
Yes.
In a much smaller size, but still noticeable.
The thought was, I think, look, if we already destroy cymbals, why not? What the heck?
Let's go for it.
No, but it's kind of true. We had then the technology, and we knew how to cut it out nicely and controlled and make it durable and stuff. And then we had that available. And of course, when you have two cymbals that fit nicely together, you sometimes have this airlock feeling of like where the air has to escape, but you clamp it down and it kills the sound basically. Very often you then tilt it, which is nice too. It also makes a different sound a little bit. But I think back in the day, people tilted it mostly so they don't kind of cancel it out. And this is with the quick sand hats doesn't happen because through this cutout. And it's also stuff that jazz drummers told me of like, oh yeah, since I cut this thing out, since I repaired the cymbal, like, it's you never have this problem anymore. But it also tames the bottom cymbal a tiny bit. What I also, And again, you can still do this. Of course, it still works. I'm not saying this is obsolete, but we use this idea basically very often in studios, and I realized people like taping a little bit the bottom cymbal so that you don't have this high frequency coming in when you play the top cymbal. And again, this has a little bit this effect already of like, okay, the bottom cymbal is there as a nice counterpart, as activating kind of more the sensitivity of the cymbal, but it doesn't add any sustain all of a sudden or any of that other weird stuff. I hope anyone is still interested. The problem is, this is very nerdy stuff, of course, and I could talk about this for hours, and we do.
We do, yes. I mean, when not here, where else? You know.
Yeah, exactly. That's
true. Cymbal makers podcast.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but we go deep into it. Very often, people just wanna know the result of all of that nerdiness, right? But yeah, maybe today, hopefully you appreciate like all the. Again, I don't want to be too precious about it, but it's not easy to make it so it's really, really nicely everything in tune, and it's sometimes still again like mysterious what you find out.
It is. I mean, when we go back to the ride for a second, when we made the first prototype with the cutout, we played him. Of course, I played him, and I noticed the difference sound-wise, and I was thinking, okay, let's really find out what this is all about. So I took one with the cutout and one exact same one without the cutout, went to our studio, and I had them mic'd up. Both rides, exactly the same mic setting, and I played them with just one stroke, one hit, and I tried to be identical for both cymbals. And I listened back, and I saw the frequency, the graphic, and it was I was amazed how much changed in the frequency spectrum from just the cutout to not the cutout.
Yeah.
It's nerdy stuff, definitely, but it's all for the sound, and it really makes a difference.
Yeah.
It really makes a difference, especially in the studio.
Yeah.
Like you said, with one microphone, also live, when you record yourself with one microphone, it'll make a difference. So I'm excited to see you use it, but at the same time, I'm very excited to see all the other drummers out there use it and hear their feedback.
Yeah.
What they are going to do with it, their experiences, and see them use it in their recordings on YouTube and hear how they use it. This is going to be really exciting.
And that's the thing. I remember like when we go back like 30 years ago or something, sometimes there was this talk of, and I sometimes today still get this with the CRS system of the isolating the thingies and stuff. And me and Sven, we try around a lot with like really optimizing sound and try to make it nice. And sometimes you get the argument like, yeah, but you know, that's studio stuff. Like that's these are the differences. Maybe that's nice for you guys, but you don't hear the differences live and stuff. First of all, I don't think that's true, but it's true that of course you hear way more accurately, and you are also more prone to listen back and actually check how the sound was. And maybe live, it just goes out and you never think about it again. But I think it's even less true now because almost everyone records with mics.
Yes.
And everyone has to somehow get an okay sound, hopefully.
Yes.
And so I think this nerdy, super detailed kind of stuff really benefits anyone who ever wants to put a mic on this above this thing, you know. So I think that these recording techniques and this recording wisdom and this taking it seriously really benefits today actually more people than it ever used to.
Yes. Maybe we should get Sven on a podcast at one point and speak to him about his experiences recording.
But then you need 4 hours.
That's okay. That's okay.
And some beeping.
Well, I think that rounds it out. I'm super excited, super happy with the result of those two cymbals. We've been working on them for almost a year, from the first idea until the launch. And yeah, it's always great to work with you on new ideas, new sounds. Like, it's been already a great experience doing this for the 20-inch Sandrite 15 years ago. I remember that very well. The result was outstanding, and this is equally outstanding. So, and I know you've been waiting for this to finally be out for many months, and here we are. And yeah, to all the listeners out there, please let us know your experiences and how you work with them, what you do with them, and how they work for you.
Can I add one thing?
Go for it.
I would be super interested of, like, even if you haven't tried it out yet, like, what is your first impression kind of? Does this kind of make sense to you? Like the stuff that we talked about, like just conceptually? And of course, I want to give back the thanks. It's for me a huge thrill. We also talked about it like for a couple of years, because Norbert was like, hey, if you ever want to, have a new idea, want to change the sound in any way. And honestly, like for more than a decade, I was like, nah.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to change it unless there's really something to something new to kind of improve. And egoistically, I'm done. Of course, I have this cymbal and I will play it and I'm happy, right? But I'm now as well super excited to see people using this now and maybe using it in contexts that I didn't think about and see it. So I can't wait to see what you guys will be doing with it and to see it pop up. And that's the other thing. You will immediately always realize where it is, because no cymbal looks like this.
It's the most noticeable cymbal
So
on the planet.
Yes. So
For sure.
When I see, I will recognize it immediately on any video. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thanks for your time.
Big pleasure.